But all right, so we're going to go into kind of what should you track. So far today you've gotten a good overview of kind of like your one metric that matters. What's the most important thing that you guys should be focused on, and then kind of like a walkthrough so far and kind of like how to optimize different parts of your funnel and choose what to target. Now we're actually going to get into what should you track and starting a little bit more on how you should track it. So my name's Adam. I've been with 500 for 7 months now, I think. So started in like February out in Asia, did a couple of the distro dojos, and then now I'm here depocking for a bunch of the fintech companies. In the last few years, I had two finance startups of my own, and then I've been for the last year or so, I've been doing a lot of analytics consulting. So tomorrow I'm going to be talking about Mixpanel, Amplitude, and kind of how to set up different tools and what's going to be best for you guys in terms of what your business is. If it's SaaS versus B2B, what tool's going to be best and what things you should be tracking with that. Today, though, it's going to be more of a high level in terms of how do you choose which metrics to track and what are some ways that we can start getting stuff down so you can keep your team accountable as well as keep heading towards the one metric that matters. So the first part here is pretty obvious. Why metrics? Really, metrics are what gives you a pulse on your business. So you can talk to customers all day. You can do lots of customer surveys. Your customers are going to tell you a lot about your product market fit. But in terms of being able to measure where you're going and where you need to be, metrics are all going to be that. Metrics are going to be the pulse of your business. Let's see if this works. Got a spinning beach ball. Okay, so KPI. Has everybody here heard of a KPI? Raise your hand. All right, cool. Good. So just quick repeat. Key performance indicator. It's going to be things that help you keep a pulse in the organization. One thing I do like to differentiate, though, is there's a difference between a KPI and a metrics number, right? So a KPI is actually something that you can have an impact on. It's going to be something that's measurable. It's going to be something that actually funnels up to the top of the things at the end of the day. Knowing whether there's five products on the average page versus 10 products on the average page on your site, that's not a KPI. It's not something that you're going to be able to have an influence on. The other side of it is KPIs are also going to be things in the context of what we're talking about today that you're going to be able to measure easily, right? If it's something that you can't really measure and you're not going to be able to get a week-by-week analysis on, it's not really a good KPI for you. The next part of this is leading and lagging indicators. So you've got KPIs, but they're kind of broken into two types. You've got leading, which we call drivers, and those are things that you're able to have an impact on right away, right? So drivers are things like number of leads generated, number of calls made. Those are things that anybody on the team can jump in and help out on, right? So if it's number of calls, let's just pick up the phone more times, guys. Let's do a few more calls. If it's something like leads generated, maybe it's, you're going to just send more traffic to landing page. You're going to try more landing pages. You're going to increase the marketing budget a little bit on those landing pages where you're getting leads. Lagging are more of top level. So generally what happens, if you're looking at this in a funnel point of view, lagging is going to be stuff that's more towards the end of the funnel, right? Leading is where you're putting things in at the top of the funnel. It's visitors, it's web traffic, it's number of calls, it's number of mailings sent out, all that type of stuff. Lagging are more of the general, more higher level things like your one metric that matters that you're not going to necessarily be able to influence directly on an everyday basis. And this is actually a pretty important concept to get your head wrapped around because sometimes people look at it and they're like, oh, number of sales, yeah, that's a leading metric as well. I just need to send more emails and to make more sales. Well, not really, because sending the emails would be the leading metric in that case. The lagging is going to be the number of sales resulting from those emails. So it's pretty important to keep those two separated because when you're looking at ways to increase your metrics or there's an area in your funnel that you're focusing on, you're going to want to make sure that you're bringing it back to something that's a leading metric that you can have an impact on right away. If you're not able to have an impact on something within 24 hours, it's not a leading impact, or it's not a leading indicator. So just a few more examples here. It's like the number of leads to your website. It's the number of visitors. It might be the number of different products you have. It could be that for your customers, you're going to be able to expand to more segments if you add more products, and you've seen an instant pick up in the number of sales you're making based off of how many products you have on your website. But drivers, as I was saying, they're levelers for us to pull. So these are things that anybody in your company is going to be able to look at and say, hey, we need more leads generated. All right, I can step in. I can do something today that's going to have an impact on that. So here's a little bit of an example of what it might be. We might start at the high level, and we're in our weekly growth meeting. We're sitting down, and we're looking at it, and we're saying, hey, sales are a lot lower than we want them to be right now, right? We have to hit 120 sales, and we're looking at right now there's going to be 100 sales closed for the month. So how do we get back up to that number? And if you look at it, it might be, well, when we tie back down into, what are the leading indicators that we were trying to hit this month that we weren't hitting? The number of leads that we generated is 50% lower than we're supposed to. All right, so what can we do right away to start generating more leads? Well, maybe it's trying a different ad network, increasing our ad spend, trying different keywords, building a new landing page. Those are immediate actions that we can take. And so the whole point of a lot of this stuff is going to be laying this out in a spreadsheet so that you guys can instantly see on a weekly basis, we are missing these numbers, we're a little behind, why? Or on the other side of it, if you have a really good week, why? One of the big problems that we see with companies at this stage is you'll all of a sudden have a week where your sales go up 30%. And you're like, yes, that's awesome, cool, we're growing. But then when it comes down to why, there might be 15 different reasons that you're giving. You're like, well, I think it's because we changed our homepage a bit. Also, we started experimenting with Facebook ads. And, Dave sent out an email that was really, really good. What do you go? What do you go with from there? It's like it's hard to necessarily know what was working and what you should be able to focus more on. So if you're going to double down, you need to have a really clear idea of what you should be focusing on with that. And then what I'm going to lay out for you today, this is going to be a bit of a process in terms of how to keep track of your metrics, your KPIs for the next couple weeks here. And the main thing is tracking your KPIs on a week-by-week basis. So just keeping in with the flow of it and making sure that every week you're going through and updating all the numbers. Sometimes companies are like, yeah, well, we've got to just hit the phones this week. Maybe we don't have time to update the spreadsheet. That's bullshit. You got to update it each week. The other side of this is make sure that you're sharing it with the whole team, especially at the stage that you guys are at right now. Visibility is super, super important. I know a lot of you are international and you've got teams back home that are working on stuff. Make sure that you're sharing this stuff with them. You want them to get value out of everything that's going on here. All right. So now I'm going to actually dive into the spreadsheet part of this. And hopefully this goes well. Usually we've done this in more of a workshop setting. I'm trying this with a bigger group today, but I think we'll be able to do it in the same way. Basically, how you're going to use this is over today and the next few days here, you're going to fill this out with everything that makes sense for you to track today. So you're going to start with your high-level stuff and kind of break down, from your one metric that matters into kind of like what are the things that are associated with that, kind of your lagging indicators around that, and then driving down to your leading indicators that are actually the things that are influencing that on a daily basis. The next thing you're going to want to do with this is you're going to make sure that you schedule a time and also appoint a person on your team. I think it's really crucial that somebody on your team is the person who's owning updating the metrics each week. And so that's going to be something where maybe it's every Friday night, could be every Sunday. It just kind of depends on, what's the day that you're tracking from. If it's Friday to Friday, you're probably going to want to update it each Friday. If it's, Monday to Monday, you're probably going to want to update it Sunday night. Just make sure that there's somebody on the team that's going to be doing that every week. Usually when it's like, oh yeah, we'll just do it every week, like, you do it this week and maybe I'll do it next week, it doesn't happen. So just make sure that you pick somebody and it's their job to fill it out. And the last thing is you're going to make sure that every week, usually on like Mondays, sometimes recaps on Fridays work as well, but just that you're coming back to the spreadsheet and going over it and kind of seeing, okay, here's how things grew this week. These are the things that we need to focus on from this. So now I'm actually going to pull this up and let's see here. Yeah, and for everybody that's online, this should be on the schedule page, I believe. There's a link to this. It's either in the presentation here, or you can actually get I think there's a direct spreadsheet link there as well. And so we've got kind of a main spreadsheet, and then I've also got two examples here. So I'm going to touch on these first. So this is a company that's they're e-commerce. This is probably the most basic form of the spreadsheet you'll see. What's that? Oh, zoom in. Yeah. It's probably good. Yeah. Okay. Is that good? Can everybody see that for the most part? All right. Sweet. So this is a e-commerce company, and this spreadsheet is something that one of the other district guys, Andy, made. This is actually, it's kind of like magic how it works. So there's like a settings page. You go in here and you kind of choose which day you want this to start with. So for you guys, I'd probably suggest about 4 weeks from when you came into 500 Startups. So 4 weeks before July 18, right? So like mid-June would probably be the first week that you want to put in here. You can go back farther if you want, and set this up to be on a weekly basis. Some people, what they do is they actually do a weekly spreadsheet, and then they'll also do like a monthly spreadsheet as well, so they can kind of compare and contrast between the two. Some businesses, there's a bit of seasonality within the month that they might do really well, especially stuff that's based on, if it has a lot of impact on when people get paid. Sometimes with those, week to week, there's going to be a lot more variation, so it might make more sense for them to track on monthly. But for the most part, you're going to go off of weekly, and then on here you can kind of choose which day of the week to have it start on as well. But the cool thing is, from that, this will all actually auto-generate all the different weeks here, and it creates spark lines. I'll show you in just a second, too, how you can create the different headings here. And then it auto-generates like a whole percentage change week over week doc, too. So this is actually really, really useful. But in terms of how you actually use this, so for this company, e-commerce, revenues are their top indicator at the end of the day. For most people, I think that the one metric that matters is either going to be revenue or tied directly to it. And then for them, they're nuanced metrics, which are more or less the lagging indicators, right? So it's like the number of orders, the number of products purchased, the average basket size. Yeah, what's up? Oh, shoot. The live stream audio is still working, right? Okay, cool. I'll just try, oh, cool, perfect. Awesome. Yeah, much better now? Perfect. All right, so yeah, so the revenue is going to be like the top line here, and then you've got the three nuanced metrics that they've built up out of this. But those are things that it's really hard to impact directly, right? If you go to the team and say, like, how can we increase the number of orders, there are going to be things where people are taking like three steps backward in their thought process to figure out, right? So it's like, how do we increase the number of orders? Well, like we got to increase the number of traffic, and then now you're already down into a driver. So we're going to focus more on the drivers in terms of what you're expecting week to week. So what ends up happening is a lot of times in your weekly growth meeting, these are the numbers you end up focusing on the most because of the ones that are what you're reporting to investors. You're going to be raising money off of. Is this like the general health of your business, where you're going? But then when you're actually looking in terms of like, okay, what do we do to improve? You're going to be dropping down in the drivers and everything else here. So for this company, the two things that they're tracking are, okay, how many new customers do we have coming in, and how many returning customers? So for their company, it was actually a lot of things were based on returning customers. A lot of it was perishable goods. So it's something where they're going to be coming back every few weeks and repurchasing. So for them, knowing the returning customers and how many of those are on each week is actually a really, really important thing for them. Not all customers were the same for this company. So they have the returning customers to make sure things are going good week to week. They've got their first time, unique visitors in here, their conversion rate, and then for them they had a big problem with their site speed. So site speed was actually one of their drivers because they noticed when they started making optimizations to increase their site speed, things went up dramatically. When we first started working with this company, I think their site took like 15 seconds to load, right? Before you could do anything. It actually had like a loading wheel that would show up for 15 seconds, and then your site showed up. So for them, it was a huge, huge thing to make sure that they were improving that on a week-by-week basis. And then in terms of actually kind of breaking these down a bit more, they've got their funnel here, so you can see, basically the same thing that you're going to get from Google Analytics, but broken down by each different channel. And then they had basically like a really simple layout for their funnel. And this is probably about the simplest you're going to see for these documents. Generally, I'd actually like to see a bit more. This is just a really, really simple one to get you guys an idea. I'll show you one next that's going to be a little bit more in-depth than this. For example, they don't really have like anything in terms of like what their cost of acquisition is or their different ad channels they're using. They just kind of have like a overall high-level number here for their CPC in terms of how much traffic it drove. But I'm going to give you a little bit of an example in terms of how we'd use this if we're in our weekly growth meeting. So let's just say it's the 28th of March, or the week after the 28th of March, and we're looking at the numbers, and we can see that the site has done a lot more revenue than it was doing the past week. We went from 34,000 to 51,000 this week. It's a big jump in revenue. What happened? Why did that happen? And so obviously you can see number of orders increased. That's what I'd expect, right? Products purchased increased as well. And it also looks like that for whatever reason we were able to get people to buy about 15% more items. We got an increase from 190 to 221 in terms of the actual average basket size there. But then when I look down at it, it looks like, you know, it doesn't look like we're increasing too much on the new customers, right? 54, 54. Not a big difference there, but we have a huge jump in revenue. And it looks like here that the reason for that is we had a lot more returning customers coming back to the site. And so if you were part of this company, you might have a few reasons for that. You know, obviously they were probably running some tests week to week. And you'd be able to answer and say, yeah, you know, we did this certain campaign. We sent out a bunch more emails. That's why. The cool thing about this, though, is I don't actually know right off the top of my head what this company was doing in that week. But from the spreadsheet, I should be able to answer that question, right? So 107 to 139, why was that? And in the ones that are more in depth, you're able to get down really, really minutely and see exactly what caused it. For this one, it doesn't get as in depth, but I can see if I'm going down here that their social traffic is probably where it came from. That was where it increased the most, right? So everything else here looks pretty much the same. Their emails actually went down, so that didn't help for returning. Referral went up a little bit, so maybe that has some impact on it, but that's actually probably pretty small in terms of the percentage of the total. But if I look here, their social traffic doubled. So I can pretty much say, and I'm sure if I went back to this company, like, it's probably most likely that they did a social campaign. They posted a bunch of stuff on their Facebook, and people that had bought before, that had liked them on Facebook, saw that, came through, and decided to purchase more. So that's kind of a little bit of an idea of how you use this spreadsheet and how you kind of dive in. So they off that they're saying, okay, obviously that social stuff worked well last week. Let's try more of that next week. Does this all make sense so far? Any questions on just like the spreadsheet in general? Cool, cool. Oh yeah, what's up? Oh, the display? I think this company didn't start doing display ads here until longer on, right? Oh, okay, I see. Other. Yeah, so I'm not sure actually what that was. That could have also had a big impact on it. But yeah, so I mean, for the purpose of this, it's a little easier to look at the social, but if it was actually sitting down with them, they'd probably have more of an explanation what happened with the other. Actually, you've got a great point there. The one thing I would say, though, with that is their conversion rate actually didn't change too much, right? So this conversion rate was like total number of visitors versus number of purchases. But, oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, the question was, he pointed out that speed actually decreased quite a bit, right, from 15 to 6 between the 2 weeks. And that probably also had a bit of an impact on it. For this one, for whatever reason, their conversion rate didn't really change too much. And I would have thought that would have been tied to performance. I'm assuming there was probably a big impact from that as well. For whatever reason, it's not reflected right here. So this next one I'm going to show you is probably a little bit better. It's got a little bit more detail on the different parts. So yeah. So you can So the reason why I showed you that one was because this is pretty simple. I mean, honestly, to build something out like this, it's basically just like they're going into Google Analytics, grabbing the numbers, taking kind of like the high level, 3 steps in their funnel they have here, unique visitors that have not purchased, add to carts, proceed to checkout, and then number of purchases. So this is a pretty simple funnel. There's not a lot going on here, and this is something that you should be able to set up pretty easily in terms of being able to track all this stuff. And one thing actually before I go into the next spreadsheet that I want to address is the question I usually get when I'm showing people all this stuff is why not just use Google Analytics? Why not just use Mixpanel? We've already got these tools. And the answer to that is you're not going to be able to tie that all together in one place very easily, right? And one of the big things that I see startups do all the time is they're like, oh, we need a cool dashboard. Like, we need an awesome dashboard. We're going to like hook something together with Clipfolio. And they spend a week and a half building it. And then the next week they realize, oh, those were not the things we needed to track, you know? It could be like you find a completely different avenue and then you're going off and doing that. So for our purposes, I think using just a spreadsheet and then pulling the numbers out of your analytics tools is going to be the easiest thing, because this is really, really easy to change. You know, if we found out for whatever reason they're not going to do orders anymore, this way everything's switching to a subscription model. You know, it's not like they just have to throw their entire dashboard out the door. It's just coming into their spreadsheet and updating the things that they're tracking. So there is definitely a point where it makes sense to have a custom-built dashboard, but I don't think anybody in here can have that justification at this point. You know, if you're doing $10 million a year in revenue, then yeah, it makes sense to have maybe your own dashboard. But up to that point, I think that there's a lot you can do just hacking stuff together in a Google spreadsheet. All right, so not to scare anybody, not scare, but this would actually be really awesome if this was in dollars. But this one's actually in Indonesian rupiah. So 58 million is not exactly $58 million. But for this one, they're highline stuff, same thing. Revenue, this company's actually tracking profit as well. I believe, okay, they started with it as well. But one of the big things for them was they wanted to increase their profit from about 20 to 25 to 30%. You can see that they did that. But I'm just going to take this one and dive into a week as well where there's a big difference. So if we look here, between the week of the 5th of June and the 12th of June, the revenue almost doubled there. And this is one, too, that this company was actually very, very seasonal. I think in a lot of the Southeast Asian countries, a lot of things are really paycheck dependent, so sometimes they'll go off of that. That's why you see the numbers bounce around quite a bit from week to week here. But for this one, they went from 31 million to 58 million in the next week. So why did that happen? So if I'm looking at the spreadsheet, I could take it once again. I look in, all right, so their retail stuff went 18 to 26 million. And I should mention, too, this is like a two-sided marketplace. So they have branded products that people can come on there and create. And then they also have just like general retail products that you go on and buy from their store. So we're looking, and so like the retail line, you know, it had good growth there. It went from 18 to 26 million. But their custom, which is kind of like their white labeled stores and stuff, that went from 13 million to 28 million. So there's obviously a much bigger jump there that's contributing to the revenue. So we can actually dive in a bit more and see what happened from that. They also started licensing products. So like this was like taking brands from the US and licensing their names and starting to sell those type of products. So they had a little bit of growth from that. That was one thing that was introduced that week. But the big thing here that I can see from just looking at their drivers is that between the 13 and 28, you know, there's a big difference there. So then if I actually go down into this a bit more, what I'm going to see is, let's compare. So retail, I went from 92 orders to 118 orders. You know, there's good growth there, but it still doesn't explain the entire difference. Their basket size went up, so this could just be fluctuations, or it could be maybe they were doing something where they were advertising more of the higher priced products. But then when I go to the custom here, I see that they went from 54 to 78, and the big thing is their average basket size grew quite a bit. So you went from, you know, having 54 orders with 100 items to now they had 70 orders with 200 items, and their average basket size increased from 240,000 to 360,000 per order. So I can say right away that they obviously were pushing more people into custom that week, or for whatever reason, their landing page, you know, the type of customers they were driving, they had a lot more success on the custom side. And then I can actually go down into this a little bit more and see, okay, you know, what was the difference in terms of actual users? Obviously, they drove a lot more users to the site between the 2 weeks, so that's definitely something that had a contribution to it. This is huge, but they changed their sign-up flow between those 2 weeks. So I can see all of a sudden they went from having 370 users to 2,000 that signed up on their website. And while they didn't have a huge impact here, it's actually kind of interesting. You can see in the next week, all of a sudden it's 40% of their users coming to the site were returning. So they didn't really have a good account setup process before. I think it was they emphasized like guest checkout, and it was like really, really small, like, you know, create an account and sign in again with it. But then the impact you can see in the later weeks actually helped out a lot with the returning users. So this is the first week of that they were doing. Let's see what else changed. This is big right here, and this is actually probably one of the main drivers for why their custom's doing better, right? So on their, there's a two-sided marketplace, the number of merchants that were going in and setting up accounts and setting up stores basically doubled in terms of the growth rate there, right? So they had way more people coming on and creating these custom stores and custom products to go from. And you can see too, like the average sales from that stayed pretty consistent, but it looks like for the most part, just the number of pure merchants they added on had a huge impact there. And then they also have like their funnel set up, so you can go in there and if there's like big differences where, you know, places in the funnel that things change week to week. And this is actually something that I would advise anybody that's doing paid ads to do is actually break your ads down by each channel, and then they kind of have an overall as well. So just to see here, they have, where'd that go? One second. Okay, yeah, so they have their total marketing budget. So their total marketing budget week to week. Looks like actually that probably had an impact on what happened there too. I mean, their marketing budget increased 60% from one week to the next. Their cost of acquisition looks like it probably didn't change too much from that week to week comparatively to how much more they were spending. So what that basically means is the acquisition channels they were going out after are at least somewhat scalable if they can grow their spend by 60% and the actual cost of acquisition doesn't go up that much. And then we'll actually go down and see, you know, where did that grow? So I can kind of see already that, okay, look at this. They had Facebook before, and that was the entire marketing budget. They've increased Facebook by 20%, but it looks like actually what they did too is they added in Google AdWords as a new channel there. And then I can go into this a bit more and see, you know, like their cost per acquisition actually went down on Facebook, which means their Google AdWords is probably a little bit more expensive than the others. So they don't actually have the CPA here, just the cost per clicks. But the next thing I'm going to do here is actually kind of pick a company in here, and we'll maybe start mapping out some of this stuff so you guys can get a better idea of it. But basically, I hope that everybody gets kind of the general idea of how this works. You know, it's essentially you kind of have like your high-level metrics, then you're just diving down into it and being able to tell the story of your business all in one spreadsheet. So does that make sense? Any questions? Yeah, what's up? Yeah, so the question asked was they said they had an app and a website, and kind of like how do you break that down for both? So I think this one had an app as well. They say, okay. So they didn't actually break it down. It looks like they have unique visitors per device and unique visitors per channel, but they didn't actually go too much in the app. But yeah, generally what we'll do is we'll have your funnel with all the conversion steps for mobile, web, and your app, right? And then kind of a blended total one as well. So it ends up being quite a few things to track, but it makes it really easy to dive into each part. Does that answer your question? Yeah, one sheet, but you kind of, you know, so you have your high level, your total in terms of like number of new orders, and then you would have, then you have to break it down per funnel. So treat your mobile funnel different than your web funnel, because I'm guessing you probably have different flow as well, right? It's probably not the exact same flow versus, you know, desktop and mobile. So yeah, put that down as each. Generally, though, I don't really break out the marketing side too much based off of each platform, unless it's really big impact. Unless you know there's a huge impact between the different ones, I wouldn't break it out. So a lot of it is, if it's going to tell you the complete story, you know, blending your mobile and your desktop spend together, and you don't really have to, you know, look into it too much more. If you were going to have a case where, you know, your mobile acquisition was 1/10 of your desktop acquisition, I'd probably break the two out. Make sense? Cool. All right, so I'm going to try this next, and we'll see how far we can actually get into this. We generally do this in a workshop setting, so it's a little bit different, but I want to just try it here now. So essentially what I want to do is just take a company and kind of just live walk through and start setting up the KPI sheet so you guys get an idea of how to do this. At the end of the day, what time? Okay, so around 4:30, we're actually going to have you guys all kind of start stepping more into this stuff, and then we're free to kind of walk around and answer any questions you have. I think a lot of this stuff, it's pretty straightforward, but when you actually get into it, and it might look easy from looking at these spreadsheets, but when you actually kind of go into it and you're like thinking of your business, like, okay, what things make sense to track, sometimes it can be a little tricky. So we're here to help you guys out with that. But what I want to do right now is if I can get in a volunteer, and preferably somebody on, what's up? Yeah, preferably a marketplace or e-commerce or something that's consumer facing. because B2B is a little bit harder to dive into at first. Yeah, what's up? What's your guys' business?
It's a subscription-based co-working class pass for co-working. It gives you access to multiple co-working spaces with one membership. So we have a subscriber base, and we also have a supply side of various co-working partners. So
Awesome. This is actually going to be perfect then. So what's your one metric that matters? Yeah, okay, so top line revenue. Are you guys like tracking profitability at the moment? Okay, so we'll keep that in here as well. And then I would probably add in another line. Actually, would you mind holding the mic for me? It's going to be way harder one-handed. Yes, so this is both in the presentation as well as, so it's like last page of the presentation from the 500 growth site, as well as I think, yeah, so the KPI sheet is here as well. So I don't think the example links are there, but the main sheet is. All right, so yeah, so you guys, the first thing you're going to want to do is make a copy of this. Can you actually hold it? Yeah, thank you. Make a copy of this sheet, and so we'll just put in here. What's the name of your company? Croissant. So Chris. Oh, okay. Let me see here. Is that right? Perfect. All right, cool. So it's called Croissant KPI. Dun dun dun. What?
Susie.
Yeah, we're not. We won't put your actual numbers in here. We're just all we're doing here is just talking through the structure of it, right? Okay. So the first thing we do in here is like I was saying before, we're just going to choose a. It's going super slow for whatever you're. Yeah. So we'll just actually pick your start date as like June 20. 3 or 4 weeks before the program started here. Goodness, yeah, and this spreadsheet has a lot going on, so sometimes it's a little slow. But once it's set up, it generally works pretty well. So we're putting your profit, your revenue. We're going to add another row here then. What? Super small. Above. All right. Whatever reason. Profit, revenue, and then we'll also add in one here for your margin percentage, right? So you're probably going to want to track on a week-by-week basis. I don't know. Is it pretty consistent for you guys? Okay. Got you. But do you play with the prices too much, or is it kind of consistent? Okay. So maybe margin wouldn't be the best one to track right away because you guys are going to have a pretty consistent margin then, I'm guessing. All right. Cool. And then in terms of the top level, though, so I'm guessing you have co-working spaces. So are you adding co-working spaces like each week or each month? All right. So I'd probably put in here. Gotcha. Is it all?
the most important KPI is
Yes. Exactly. So I actually would put that right under here with the profit and revenue is like number of subscribers, right? Because that's going to be super, super important. And then in terms of the other things attached to that, so the number of total offices, I'm guessing. Number of total seats. And let's see here. So you got number of subscribers. In terms of your, is there a price per seat that changes? Or is it pretty regular right now? So is it... Okay, so we'll put order size in. Yeah, perfect. So average size of new order. So it might be the different, whether it's the $29, $49, or whatever plan. Cool. And then just to keep this shorter in the interest of time, I'm just going to kind of keep buzzing through this here. So for drivers, it'd be, number of new subscribers, right? It'd probably also be in your more top line nuance, you're going to have something probably like your retention rate, right? That's going to be really important for you guys. Let's see. For drivers, where do you get most of your signups right now? Organic search. Okay. So just unique visitors to your website is going to be a driver there in that sense. Let's see here. And then in terms of your funnel, is it mobile versus desktop? Is there an app as well? Got you. So in that case, I would kind of say that you're probably going to have two areas of metrics there, right? You're going to have your desktop for basically your funnel for acquisition, and then does the app have a big contribution to retention right now? Yeah, I'm guessing that's the reason why you have it, right? In terms of like making it easier. Oh, got you. So like booking them. So actually, it does then. So if they're opening the app every week, then it's almost like almost a leading indicator of how many people are actually using the service then. Okay. Got you. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Yeah. But I would say too though that them actually engaging with the app is a sign that they're still interested in the service, right? And then you might see two sides of that, like if there's a lot of people using the app but no one's really booking seats, like maybe the locations need to be better or something else. Or the places that they want to go are booked up for that day. Let's see here. So the next thing here that I would do is obviously like we were just talking about. So your desktop acquisition here, and then are there quite a few different steps to your funnel, or is it kind of like a one-step process, or what's your sign up like? All right. Got you. So we'll do like choose membership. We'll also do payment down here. And the way that this sheet is set up, just to kind of show you guys something right here, because you're going to find this yourself. It's kind of cool, but there's actually, if you see in the top, there's A, B, and C. Sorry. A, B, and C, the columns up to the left there, actually will automatically churn into a different subheading. It's kind of just some magic that was baked in the spreadsheet. So if we wanted to put into here, like if we were actually going to like just track like product usage as well as its own part of this, if I put that in column A in just a second, that whole, it turns orange. So just kind of cool, it automatically styles for you. So if you were, let's just say that you had a difference between your Android and iOS ones. I don't know if there is, but those might be ones that we'd break out separately. And then for the product usage, it might be, number of opens, and then like, number of bookings. And this is probably like number of unique people that opened, right? And then this probably would be more so like number of subscribers with a booking, right? So not total number of bookings, but so we can look at this and see like, okay, how active is your user base on a week-by-week basis? 10% of your users are booking each week, 30% of users are booking each week. Just getting a general idea of that. And then real quick here, just in the interest of time. So usually I would break some of these out a little bit more, but we're just trying to get through this real quick here. What do you guys have for acquisition channels right now? Like paid ads, it's organic search you said was the main one? Okay. So referrals are pretty big for you guys as well? Okay, cool. So then I would make a section for referrals here as well. This might be over the overall heading of acquisition. That's not how you spell referrals, right? Am I not thinking here? All right, fine. All right, so referrals. So for referrals, it might be something along the lines of number of invite codes generated, or I don't know if, that might be consistent for each person. Okay, like number of times code tweeted, but basic idea here is just kind of like getting all the different pieces that contribute to it, right? For organic search, you might be tracking like for certain, maybe you have a bucket of 5 keywords and you want to just keep consistently tracking, what's your search position for those keywords. That might be something that makes sense to track. in terms of like levers that you guys have right now, though, right? So if I told you like, hey, nothing else matters, next week you have to have 20% new users sign up to the platform, what would you do? But you have to have an idea, right? So there's got to be something that you could try. What's the first thing your mind jumps to? PR opportunities, so like maybe doing like a guest post with somebody that's runs a bunch of them, or reaching out to some reporters. All right, those are a little bit harder things to track on a week-by-week basis, as it's not really consistent. But it might be in the sense of like if you're doing something with content marketing, right? So it might be okay, you know, like number of articles written this week. What was the average time of engagement, and then how many people signed up for your email list from that? And this might be something that you actually include ones that you do guest posted on as well. All right, so the other thing you're saying is paid ads, right? So I just want to just walk through this real quick because pretty much everybody in here, I imagine, is going to be doing something with paid ads. And so for those, the big things are going to be just breaking it out by the different channels, whether it's Facebook or Google. And then it's going to be things like, okay, you know, like what was the total budget? What was the cost of acquisition for that channel? It's also good to track like the conversion rate for the channel. And you're probably going to want to, maybe you're tracking something like CPC as well. So you can kind of see from that how everything else will be affected. Yeah.
We're just not tracking everything all the way through. So, you know, we don't necessarily know what our baseline is for AdWords and Facebook ads. So what would you, other than, you know, go through and fix everything, what else would you recommend for at least trying to estimate it or get some guesses in there?
So some of those are actually, so the question, Matt, is basically around the idea of you've used ads for a little while now, but you really haven't been just tracking it or really digging down to see how it has an impact. Okay. Got you. Yeah, that's super common with people that have apps, not being able to track all the way through, because the amount of tracking stuff that you have to set up, there's a bunch of nuances with it, right, to get everything taken care of for there. So, I mean, I think the easiest thing I'd say is, first off, just make sure that you guys get those things set right away with the tracking. But in terms of the past stuff, the easiest thing that you can do is basically what I usually do is I'll look at like, okay, here's the growth rate, right? So you had 100 users that signed up and downloaded the app this week, 150 that signed up and downloaded it the next week, and looking at that over a few weeks and also comparing it to your marketing budget, right? So if it went from 100 to 120 organically when your marketing budget didn't change too much, but then the next week it goes to 180 new users and it was because you doubled your marketing budget, then you can kind of like back that out and start figuring out a little bit in terms of like, okay, how much is our marketing having an effect versus the organic? And then from that, cost of acquisition would be, all right, so that we think basically like 20 users a week were coming when we were spending $1,000 a week. So basically, we've got like a $50 cost of acquisition through Facebook right now. And that's, like I said, that's going to be a benchmark for now. Going forward, you're going to get a lot more accurate numbers, but then you have something to kind of go off of a bit. Cool. I think just in the interest of time, I won't go too much farther into this. I think like afterwards when we're walking around, we can walk into this a little bit more. Does anybody have any questions in terms of how to kind of think about this a bit more right now? Cool. Oh, yeah, what's up? Yeah, so the question is basically, how do you make sure that you're not going too far into detail? Because if you have, 350 rows in here of different metrics, there's a point where it almost just becomes noise a little bit. And the whole point of this document is to kind of remove that noise so that you don't have to open up every single analytics tool. So the answer to that is a lot of it just has to do off of feel, right? You're gonna have, if you're looking at certain lines every week, they're obviously important. If there's some line items in here that you're like looking at week to week, but every week it's kind of the same thing, maybe it doesn't make sense to track right now, right? It might make something that makes sense to track in the future where you get a little bit more into it, but a lot of it is, when you're going through this weekly, you'll know which stuff matters and which stuff doesn't, and what's not having an impact. And so those are the things you can kind of like start pulling out of it. And those are, this is something too where it's like, this is a very iterative process. It's something where every week you're going to come back to it and say, shoot, like the retention of this would make more sense to track than this piece over here. Let's just update the sheet with it. That's the whole reason we do it in like a spreadsheet format, like I was saying, other than doing a actual like whole dashboard build out. Yeah. So he said basically like, sometimes it's tough to break down in terms of like what areas do I need to be tracking and what do I need to know, right? For that, I would say a lot of it just comes to ask the question why when you're doing this stuff, right? And I maybe should have done that when I was walking through these KPI sheets before, but basically what I was doing is I was saying, okay, revenue changed from this to this each week. Why, right? And if you can get to the point where you have an answer that's good enough and you feel satisfied with it, then you know that you're kind of going into enough detail. Does that make sense? Cool. Got you. So your question is basically if conferences that are 4 to 6 weeks long, or 4 to 6 weeks sorry, not 4 to 6 week conferences, 4 to 6 weeks of 4 to 6 months of prep before the conference, you're saying, or? Oh, okay. Yeah, you're talking from a B2B side, right? Yeah. So a lot of the stuff for B2B, some of your CRM tools a lot of time are going to track this stuff for you guys already. But it can help too to kind of pull that out in the interest of like putting all your analytics in one spot, kind of like a high level. What I've seen a bunch of companies do, and if you want to see, I can actually show you. I'll pull up another example. I gotta like strip the name out and stuff before I show it up in front of people. But I get some examples of ones that are B2B, and it's basically you're just like taking the funnels and stuff like that, right? And kind of breaking those into a little bit of cohorts as well. But yeah, same basic principles. Cool. All right. I thought there was one more question from somebody. Are we good? Cool. All right. So I'll wrap this up. Basically, we'll be going over this stuff a little bit more after 4. If anyone else has any questions on this stuff, feel free to grab me. I can help you guys, figure out what metrics to track. Anybody else in the distro team is going to be familiar with this sheet as well and should be able to help you guys out. So just let me know.